Every apparent character is misleading. Every apparent person has all of their own uniqueness, their quirks, their apparent past experiences that created this seeming conditioning and programming of the body and the mind. And in the story, a lot of different factors play this role in molding or creating this character that is appearing but is also nothing appearing as that character. And it's not even appearing as the character. The character is simultaneously absolute emptiness, just like everything else. So let's say you have friends. All of their characters are very different. And perhaps you gravitate toward one more than the other. Maybe certain values are more similar, certain hobbies, certain interests, certain traits. Being an introvert, an extrovert, being more honest, being more open, genuine. Being more reserved, being more quiet, loud. Being sarcastic, having a sense of humor, cursing, feeling free to express whatever. It could be a number of different things. And no apparent person, no apparent character is the same. That's not even possible. So then we move to all of these roles that these characters play. A parent, a mom, a dad, a sister, a teacher, a spiritual teacher, a speaker. No matter what it is, that character is unique. That character is not really that much of a reflection of the role. The role is just the role. I'm not saying that the character can't influence the type of role that is played. That could certainly be the case, but the same role can be played by many different characters, and that's often the case. But if we speak about spiritual teachers and speakers and how the character is portrayed in all of these different ways, how the expression happens to arise, it's all so different. And it can't help but be misleading. And it's not even that it's really misleading, it's that the me sense can't help but project certain things onto a teacher or a speaker, an apparent figure that is projected as special. Like they have something that I don't have. In a way that the me automatically does that to one degree or another. And there's nothing right or wrong with that. I guess there's just a wanting to mention it and to say that whatever the character is saying, there is no truth in it. It's just what's happening. It's just what's arising there. You could say it's one apparent perspective or viewpoint, but it sounds like there's someone there with a perspective and a viewpoint, but it's just this animated character that's appearing from nothing, that is nothing, and yet it expresses in a certain way or doesn't express. Even certain speakers, the speakers of this radical non-dual message, is misleading in the sense that it seems like to a certain level, a certain type of character expresses this and plays the role of a speaker, an apparent speaker. There's no one here playing a role, but it just appears that way. It could be seen that way by the me sense. It's just what's happening. No one's doing it. So it seems like those who share relatively have a sense of peace within the character. And this could also be misleading because I can't say for sure. Nothing can be said for sure. But without the me sense, the character can express in so many different ways. And if that character, let's say since early childhood, was sad, depressed, and scared and didn't have much safety, then it could be likely that even when the me sense drops, which is seen to never really have happened because it never really existed, then that character, if there's a lot of trauma in the system, it can be extremely painful. There can be turmoil. There can be absolutely no desire to want to speak about this, no interest at all, because there's just so much pain. And the thing is, we don't hear about those because they're not expressing. They're not out there, and therefore they're not exposed and seen the full spectrum. There is no spectrum, but just for the sake of using words, the full spectrum of the different unique types of characters are not seen. So if I were to expose this character when she was very young, she was very happy, annoyingly happy, joyful. The character's normal state was a state of just feeling good. loving life, playing. And for the majority of her life after, maybe she was about 10 years old, it was tremendous amount of sadness and depression and trauma. And then in the story, there was apparent healing of that trauma, feeling more at peace again. And apparently when this me sense dropped, which couldn't be predicted, which wasn't achieved, it was not planned, it just happened. And there's no knowing why. But when it happened, it seemed as if this expression that was very particular to this character seemed to express. And so there is this joy and this sense of wonder when this message is shared, when this expression happens. That seems to be why it's happening, why it's arising. That's not better or worse than anything. That's just what's happening. This character apparently learned how to be radical in her way of expression, because she was so suppressed when she was younger. She went the opposite way and expressed fully, and never wanted to be tied down, never wanted to play by the rules, never wanted anyone to tell her what to do. So this character because of deep suffering, it wasn't a choice made by the character, it was because of deep suffering that this apparently played out this way. Who knows why? But her self-acceptance and her wanting to just express freely, purely, as genuinely as possible, was conditioned in her for whatever reason. And so apparently this expression appears this way. That's just how it's appearing here. There's a preference to be as honest as possible. There's a preference to not be hated so much. There's a preference to be liked. It's not taken so seriously. There's not that much heaviness to the hatred or the praise. But there's a preference here, a little more for the positive. So a bit of the expression is slightly filtered when there's a knowing that it will be recorded and put on this thing we call the internet. That apparently just seems to happen. This slight understanding that certain things will be really misinterpreted, really harshly criticized. So there is a bit of caution there. And does that affect the way this is expressed? Sure, maybe. There's not much care about it anymore. It's just what's happening. There's no one here really conscious of that. That's just what's happening. It's just how it's being expressed. And so this character is very misleading. perhaps certain me's, the me sense will interpret this as when the me drops, then the character will be fully free to express, and it will be fully itself. It will be fearless. It will be so honest and genuine. It will, whatever it might think, whatever, however it projects this image onto an apparent other. And that's also just what's happening. So it's not a problem. There's nothing right or wrong with it. Even if it's seen as a problem, that's not a problem. But there's this wanting for no reason to, I guess you can say, clear the air and say that every expression of this is so drastically colored by the character. Apparent enlightenment that does not happen to anyone. No one gets enlightened. No one reaches a state. No one gets anything. No one is here deeply relishing this life because no one owns it. This is not someone's life. This is just what's happening. You could say this is apparently what's unfolding, but even that is part of the story. This unfolding is part of a story and this apparent timeline, this apparent journey that no one is on. It's just what's happening. It's just how it's appearing. So this character also has a preference to do the inner work, the apparent inner work. There is no inner work. There is no inner and outer. There is no actual identity that can become more conscious or see their conditioning and decondition themselves. But if there were to be a description of what's happening without the sense of me, is that there is conditioning here to notice certain things. There is conditioning here to want to apparently grow and learn. And that's just what's happening. So there's a preference in the character to see that that could actually be a relatively good thing in order to at least minimize the pain of an apparent person, of the body, of the mind, of the brain. When there's a talking to apparent others who are deeply, deeply in pain after the me sense drops because there is no filter anymore, it's full on pain. It's full on what it is. It's full on the trauma that wasn't processed. And there's nothing right or wrong with that. That's just how it's happening. That's just what's appearing. So there seems to be a preference here in this character to see that looking at the conditioning and seeing where perhaps there could be some sort of improvement in it, might be a good thing before and after this apparent happening that never happens. Because here, when the conditioning is seen, when certain things happen, pain arises and certain boundaries appear to be made, certain things are said, actions are taken, no one is doing it, it's all just happening. And that even sounds like a story, but really it's all just what's happening. This is just a description that is always misleading, that will always be misinterpreted. But because we have to use language to communicate, that's the best I can do right now. And there's just a preference here to minimize pain. That has nothing to do with this. That has nothing to do with already this. Already just what's happening. That has nothing to do with no self. Whether there is a sense of self, whether it dropped, that has nothing to do with the type of conditioning, with the amount of trauma. Perhaps some can say that with less trauma it's more likely, but who's to say that for sure? And this cannot be predicted, this cannot be known. We don't know why. There's no one here to know why and when and how. And again, those that haven't healed a lot of their trauma and the me-sense still dissolves are feeling immense pain. And they don't want to share. There isn't a desire or wanting to share this, so they're not known. The full spectrum isn't seen. And even those that don't have a lot of trauma and feel quite at peace or decent, they just want to live a normal life and not speak about this, want to perhaps forget about this and move on, so to speak. That's just what's happening. That's just what's arising there. Nothing right or wrong with that. But what you're seeing here, this apparent speaker, there is no speaker. This is just an expression. This character finds joy in expressing like this. There is no reason. There is no purpose to this message. This will not save the world. There's no saying if this will drastically minimize suffering. There's just no way of knowing that. Saying anything for sure, anything definitively, anything that's said definitively is part of the story, is part of this narrative. And it can be beautiful, it can be very hopeful for the person. And for this character, there's no preference to convince anyone of anything. This is just an expression. And if apparent characters love the idea of raising consciousness and helping others do the same, and believing that believing certain things like that, that's what's wrong with that? There is nothing right or wrong with it. It's all part of the play. Just like this expression is happening with no real purpose or point, this is also part of the play. Those people, those characters, apparent characters that are deeply in pain and don't have any desire to share this at all, that's part of the play. There is no distinction. There is no better or worse. It's all just what's happening. This is nothing everythinging. This is full on, immediate, no separation, vibrant aliveness. And it's totally empty simultaneously. This really is emptiness full on playing in whatever way. In the variety is infinite in the story. That's how it appears. There is no one way. There is no one expression. There is no right and wrong. This is full on just what it is. Nothing really can be said for sure. Nothing can be known. No one is here knowing anything. It's a total, total mystery. And so that's why there is no difference between spiritual teachers, speakers, mothers, fathers, professors, children, sages. Sinners, saints. This is the great equalizer. Whatever that means, this is total equality. The evenness is not understood by the mind. It's not understandable. This is not an understanding. This is not knowable. This is the end, the disappearance of a sense of separation, which is also this, already this. So there's nothing wrong or right with it. This is just a description, an attempt to describe the indescribable. This is full-on wholeness, unconditioned freedom. This is freedom. Looks like anything. Includes everything. This is inescapable. Nothing is beyond this. Nothing is apart from this. Nothing is observing or witnessing or able to understand or see this. Not that anyone knows. There's no one here who knows. In a way, there's already freedom for the character, regardless of whether the me sense drops or not. It may be hard to hear for the me, but it doesn't really matter if the me sense drops or not. And there's no saying when or if it will ever happen, because no one makes it happen. No one is in control. No one can do it. No one can achieve it. Because it's already the case. There's already no one there. This sense of an illusion is illusory. And it can feel extremely real. It's so convincing. And it doesn't even have to be convincing, it just automatically is what it is. It's the me's whole reality. And it's amazing that it can appear that way. But it is illusory. It's not, it never really began and it'll never really end. It might seem that way. But really, there is no death because there was no birth. This apparent body will die one day. Seemingly, apparently. When that will be, but there's no one in the body. There's no one owning and claiming it. It doesn't make it not real. It's relatively real, but it is nothing. It is emptiness, bodying, emptiness, handing, emptiness, talking. It's a total mystery.